What's the line here, girl? You got a problem here, guy?
I had this secret. There's a darkness inside of me. It followed me here. And it's gonna keep coming for us. We share a certain history. This isn't like any other Ghostface. What is this place?
A shrine.
We've got to lure him in. We execute him.
Hello?
Let's play a game.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right? It never works out for the dipshit in the mask.
Maybe. But there's never been one like me, Gale. I'm something different.
That's why I'm gonna shoot you in the head.
You want me. So let's finish this.
Guys?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, slasher fans. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Mike. I actually, for the first time ever, I watched a Scream movie twice in the theaters. So it's been an interesting weekend. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, when I saw your post that you were going again, I was like, all right, either he wasn't paying attention the first time or that's a positive sign. So
yeah, either I really liked it or I fell asleep the first time watching it. You'll find out in a few minutes.
All right. Also joining us, as always, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Hey, what's going on? Always great to be here.
Cool. And we invited a guest to this episode. She is returning. She was here a while ago, and she's back. It's not the Williams sister you might think that is wanting to talk about a Scream movie, although I'm sure you'll hear her talk about it plenty in the next week or so. But it is her sister, also star of the Slumber Party Massacre podcast. It's Nikki Williams. What's up, Nikki?
Hey, thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I actually just saw the movie this morning. We had a snowstorm last night, and I had to switch out the tickets. I had tickets for the 6:30 showing last night, so I had to call because the roads were just awful. And my sister, she lives like 5 minutes from the theater. She's like, it took me like 15-20 minutes to get home. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch out the tickets. So I saw it this morning and I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah. So, and before we get into it, to talk about this movie, just a little bit of housekeeping. We recorded the previous episode of Fresh Cuts like later in the week than usual. It is up on YouTube, so anyone subbed on YouTube probably has already seen it. But I'm guessing that the head of the network, just on weekends, he's probably not home to post stuff. So there's a chance that this episode and that episode get posted on the network itself around the same time. But yeah, I'm going to try to have this one ready ASAP just because it's a huge release. People are already talking about it. Probably people will be talking about it. So we want to get our episode out there too. So with that said, yeah, just because people might be like, oh, did you skip a week and save for this? No, we didn't. We just recorded later in the week than usual. So, and that's a Spoonful of Sugar episode. So, yeah. So all right, so Scream 6, let's see, synopsis. I mean, it is a Scream movie, so it's not that big of a surprise, but in the next installment, the survivors of the Ghostface killings leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh chapter in New York City. All right, short to the point, and like I said, it's a Scream movie, so other than that, what else do you need to be told up front? So we will start kind of general thoughts, but this kind of be like a hybrid version. I would say, you know, when it comes to a whodunit style slasher, you should probably be on alert for even like quasi or halfway spoilers, even from the start of the show, when we try not to just come out and say everything. So I'm just going to put the spoiler warning up at the beginning of this episode just in case. And with that, I'll kick it to Venom for his opening thoughts on Scream 6.
All right, well, let's rewind about 14 months back to Scream 5, which is the only Scream movie that we've ever reviewed on Fresh Cuts. Those of you who are longtime listeners remember that on that episode, I talked about how Scream is not my franchise. I am a much older gentleman than most. I was already almost 30 when the original Scream movie came out, so this is not my franchise by any stretch of the imagination. I've always given the movie credit for what it did, the first movie that is. It basically created its own subgenre of horror and, you know, brought a lot of the young people back into the movie theaters to watch horror movies, so I'll always appreciate what it did. Now, as I said, rewind 14 months, and if you remember correctly, I did not give Scream 5 a very favorable review. I am not a big fan of this franchise. I feel like the movies are all very formulaic, and that they all kind of do the same versions of the same thing over and over again, specifically with the, you know, killer reveals and their motivations for why they're doing this. Well, my friends, I am happy to subvert expectations on this one because I fucking had a great time with Scream 6. I don't know what the hell they did in this movie that finally got me on board with this franchise, but I had an absolute blast with it. I did not miss Sydney in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I had a better time with this film when legacy characters were not on screen. Anytime Gale or Kirby showed up on screen, it actually like, oh, that's right, I'm watching a Scream movie. Whereas all the times, you know, when they're not on screen, I'm so invested in the story, the characters, the action, that I'm just not thinking about the fact that, oh, right, this is a Scream movie. So kudos to the new cast, the core four, as they're dubbed in this film. I thought all did a great job. Honestly, I think the legacy characters are the downfall of this movie. Like, I'm going to make a statement that's probably going to piss off a lot of people, but I just don't give a shit. Courtney Cox and what's her name, Hayden Panettiere, are just not that good of actors to me. I don't understand why people acclaim these two as great actors. Courtney Cox did fine on Friends, you know, as a comedic actress. She kind of, you know, she pulled off the role well. Hayden, about the only thing I've ever seen her in that I liked was Heroes, and I pretty much only watched the first couple of seasons of that show, so who cares? I just felt like some of the line deliveries from our two legacy characters were just awful. Like, they really, really threw me out of it. I gotta say, I enjoyed Dermot Mulroney as a homicide detective here in New York City who is investigating these murders. I thought he did a great job. As I said, the new characters, you know, the new roommates and everything else, I thought they did fine in their roles. One thing I really got to say about this movie, this is a brutal ass Scream movie. This is probably the most brutal Ghostface that we've ever seen. Just it seems like he's really, really enjoying these kills. Even some of the kills from our heroes towards the end of the film look very much like they're enjoying what they're doing. You know, they're not just stabbing someone once and walking away. They're stabbing someone 40 fucking times and then watching them die, which obviously these are hardcore horror movie fans who know no one is dead until you watch them die. And obviously with the reemergence of Kirby, there's proof right there, a character that we all thought was dead. And nope, she just got stabbed and survived. So Which brings me to another complaint I have about this movie, and that is the durability of some of the characters in this movie. There are multiple characters in this movie that either live longer than they really should based on their injuries or flat out survive. There's one character in this movie that is literally stabbed about a dozen times by 2 different Ghostface and still fucking survives. Now, granted, I will fully admit the guy is an absolute physical specimen. He's a stud. So I will cut a little bit of slack there, but even rappers who get shot 8 times and survive are looking at this guy like, whoa, that's a little excessive. That just doesn't make sense. But again, it's a Scream movie. We suspend disbelief. I still have the same problem with the killer reveals in this movie that I've had with every Scream movie. It just seems so formulaic and just dull and stupid, and this movie isn't that different. But because, in my opinion, this movie doesn't rely on its, killer reveal, I had a fucking blast with this movie. This movie is just a tick over 2 hours, and it did not feel 2 hours to me. The movie went by really quick. I love the pacing. You don't have to wait long. Probably one of the coolest cold opens of a Scream movie ever. I absolutely love what they did with the cold open here. We'll get into it more later on. But yeah, there's a lot about this movie that I really enjoyed. I loved Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera in this one. I thought their performances were great. I love the fact that Tara isn't the star of this movie. Like, it bothered me that Tara had so much screen time in Scream 5, even though really it's her sister that's the fucking star. She's the catalyst for all of this. And they got it right in this movie. Tara is a secondary character. She's still a main character, yes, but she's not the star. And I appreciate that. The franchise is finally recognizing who the people that have gone through the most trauma are. So let me just cut off my general thoughts there. I know I got long-winded, but I'm just really excited for the fact that I actually saw a Scream movie that I like. This is by far my favorite Scream movie since the original. As I mentioned earlier, I saw it twice this weekend. I've never seen a Scream movie twice in theaters, even the original, as good as that one is. And this one, I just felt compelled to go watch it again, because after the first viewing, I was shocked that I enjoyed it so much. I'm like, wait, did I really fucking enjoy a Scream movie? So that's partially why I went to watch it again today. And I can confirm that, yes, I enjoyed a Scream movie. So yeah, mark it down. It took 5 sequels before they kind of got me back on board. But yeah, I had a really good time with it, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to Scream 7. Go figure. That's it. I'll cut it off at that.
All right. Scream 6 has at least one convert, so I'll throw it over to Dawn on your general thoughts on Scream 6.
Yeah, there's a second one, because I absolutely love this one as well. I'm even going to go so far as to say this is my favorite in the franchise. I had long held out that 2 was my personal favorite, and that's been surpassed. I love this one. I'm kind of in agreement with a lot of what Venom said here. A lot of the set pieces are just amazing. The chases in here are fantastic. I love that it actually included one aspect that we actually picked apart in the last one, which was that even though that there's some issues with durability, which I'll touch on in a minute, like he said, but there's a far more I mean this in the great sense. There's a far more, I guess you could say, intent behind Ghostface here, where he doesn't fuck himself over trying to get at people. He doesn't trip and fall. He doesn't really clumsily crash into things. He doesn't really stumble when he's going after somebody. If he wants to go after somebody, he goes after them and gets them. And it's only either through divine intervention or somebody else coming to save the day that is able to prevent him from taking somebody out. And I really enjoyed that. It added a lot of suspense to this stalking scenes. A few of them are unbelievably brutal, and I was really kind of surprised that it actually went as far as it did. And it had some really, really graphic set pieces throughout. I do agree. I really think that just keeping so many legacy characters alive is the undoing of this franchise, because you have to keep you have to keep all these people alive to, carry the franchise on, and you got to start knocking them off, or you got to do what this one did. And they gave us one line in Sydney saying, I don't want to be involved. I'm going to take my family somewhere safe, and we never saw or heard from her again. That was fantastic. I loved it. What we need to do, get her out of the way, get everything, spell it out and get it out of the way and just move on. And I do agree with what he said. I do think that the legacy characters that this one kept around here are the weak points of the film. I didn't think that there was much for Kirby to be around. She had one sequence where she tried to show off her movie knowledge, which was complete bullshit. That was a novice sequence that any kind of horror fan would have written. And it, for a film about, the smart horror characters, this was kind of a disappointment. And Gale does absolutely nothing. I mean, her sequence is fine, but that's all she's really there for. She's only got one sequence, and then that's it. And yeah, keeping the new core four, as they say, is a step in the right direction. Now, I will say this: if they're gonna bring them back for Scream 7, start knocking them off, because I don't want a repeat of this whole thing all over again, where you keep the legacy characters alive. Split up a relationship, knock both of them off. I don't care, but you gotta do something now, because you've had them survive 2 films. I don't want them around for very much longer if you're going to keep this thing going, because then it's going to start running into the same problems that the original run of the franchise had, where you keep the recurring characters alive far longer than they should have. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't disagree with almost everything. Everything he said was right on with where I am. I mean, the story is fantastic. It's brisk. It's fun. The killers are stupid and uninteresting, and they have BS motivations that just are completely nonsensical. And yeah, I don't have much else to add. Yeah, that was kind of right in line with where I was thinking. So yeah, I'm right on there. And yeah, it's my favorite in the franchise now. So I'm right up there with them.
Honestly, it might be mine, but I'd have to go back and rewatch them. I haven't watched the original in about a year and a half, but I'm right there in line with you. This might be my favorite Scream movie. Crazy. All
right. Normally I would go to the guest next and save mine for last, but I'm going to pull out Audible only for the fact that largely what I have to say for general thoughts kind of matches what's already been said. So I don't want to build up my thoughts like it's going to be some different opinion.
Well, anybody listens to the show for you anyway.
I have to listen to myself when I play it back. So, but yeah, I may agree. I had a lot of fun with this one, and to me, it's going to sound strange because it's a Scream movie, but to me, the main things that held it back or what the criticisms are when the movie felt like it had to remind us that it was a Scream movie, right? Because obviously we're going to get the Ghostface killer that we know, or killers. We know that going in, so we're already kind of set up for that. But I felt like one of our criticisms with Scream 5 was it felt totally unnecessary and forced that the legacy characters were even brought back in. I believe at the time I said at least Dewey, there was a little bit of a justification because he was formerly law enforcement, so it makes sense you would reach out to him. But it seems so ridiculous that Sydney even decided to put herself in danger for it. This one, I think it's actually it didn't really hurt, and I know that might be a personal preference for every viewer depending on how much you think that her character is important to every Scream movie just because. So that could be a difference in just personal preference. But for me, I was fine with her not being in this. Gale really has no reason to be in this one either, though. I mean, why is she there? What? I guess if you're just a fan of the legacy characters always popping up, then you might smile just because she's there being Gale. But really, she seemed pretty inconsequential to the movie. Yes, they write in her to be useful in some aspects, but it really wasn't necessary. Also, Hayden Piernet, or however you say her last name, as the FBI agent that doesn't really seem to be that good of an FBI agent, to be honest, because there's some reveals we get later with the killer that I'm
there's
How did the
something
FBI not know this? Like,
there's something I'll bring up, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But I do have an idea that you could have actually written Gale out of this completely. It just had Kirby there to do something, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But I have a theory for how to fix that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought the change of location itself was justification enough for the legacy character. Like, to me, it made sense why Sydney might not be in it, and I'm like, well, then really Gale didn't have to be either. Because to me, the strongest points of this movie is when they decided, okay, we're out of Woodsboro, we're in a different location, we're gonna try to just make it its own kind of script. It's almost like it was halfway that oddball entry in a series where they just kind of want to do their own thing and like we're going to do things a little different. Anytime that was happening, that's what I thought the strength of the movie is. What held it back to me was when they you got the constant, okay, well, we have to do this because it's a Scream movie. Like when we got our like a meta narrative in this, I thought it was one of the weaker meta narratives in the entire franchise because one, it felt just like a retread of what they talked about when they said sequels, except they changed the word sequels to franchise. But everything they said about a franchise, I'm like, okay, it's just a pretty much line for line about sequel, or bigger kills, everyone's not safe now. Like, we heard all this already. Also, okay, the reveal, I'm okay with the reveal of like the main kind of mastermind character, but the two additional, who would they turn out to be? I felt like they were NPC characters to begin with, people that were barely there. Like, I don't know, it just was disappointing because, like, yes, you can take any character that's only in the movie for a couple scenes and say, oh, look, they're actually these people. It's like, well, great. I mean, we saw them for a total of 5 minutes on screen for the whole movie, and then but they're actually these important characters to the story. I thought it was kind of weak sauce. And then, but overall, I just had fun with it. I thought it was fun. The opening kill was really fun, and I liked how they did something a little bit different. Like, they managed to figure out a different way to execute that. And then we kind of almost get like an extended scene there because of what happens after the opening kill. I thought was pretty cool and new and creative. And some of the kills were brutal. I like the sequence with the ladder between the apartment buildings. That was pretty cool. What else? I think someone already made the point where the heroes at the end, like even some of the kills they did to the killers was pretty good. There was something from Scream 5 that returned that I was really hoping wouldn't, because God, like the fact that they doubled down on that element just was like, why? We didn't need that in another Scream movie. If that doesn't tip people off, we'll get into it when we really get into the spoilers and stuff. But and overall, like I think they kind of made an attempt in this one, it feels like, to say we're creating like the new core of legacy characters where they're going to be the ones that are just going to automatically survive every movie now. And I kind of think that's a mistake. Like, I'm fine with like one or two of them surviving. You expect that. But it feels like they made an effort to say, okay, these people will not be dying in Scream movies going forward, as long as like they're like the legacy. And I don't want to say the phrase, because if I say the phrase and anyone has seen it, it's gonna be, oh, that's who they're talking about. But generally, yeah, I think I did like this more than 5. I think comparing 5 and 6 for Scream fans, I think 5 might have been like the better like Scream blueprint movie, but I think this was a more fun movie that just, if they would have totally abandoned some of the things they felt they needed to put in a Scream movie, it would have been even better. But as it stands now, I had fun with it. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for my general thoughts. So now to our guest, Nikki. Maybe she's going to tell us we're all wrong. But
I hope so.
Yeah, Nikki. Yeah, that's why I wanted her. I pulled the audible because like I'm just going to repeat a lot of what was already said. So let's see, Nikki, your general thoughts on Scream 6.
Yeah, so I, to Venom, am not a big Scream franchise person. And that's always been kind of difficult because this is my sister's jam of a franchise. So always talking about it with her. She has like all this vast knowledge and has seen the movies many times. I have seen the first and the second one many times, and I love both of those. But even when I watched the first one, I wasn't blown away by it. Not in the way that she was. I mean, I enjoyed it, but there's just something about this franchise that I've never really fully been able to connect with. And it's like every time they come out with a new movie, I'm like, okay, this is the one that's gonna like completely blow my mind. And that still has yet to happen. I think this film has some very strong moments, and I'll talk about what I love about it first. What I love about it is that this is Ghostface in Manhattan. He's just killing people in public. So like when I saw this in the trailer, I thought, whoa, is this going to be a killer who is tired of all the copycats, someone who wants authenticity and is not afraid to like put themselves out there? Like I thought like it was kind of like the whole, the mask is coming off and this is the real Ghostface. And I thought, well, that's a really badass concept, And I really think the trailer looked much cooler than the film itself. But all of the scenes with the killer in this, I thought were really solid. And I loved the grocery store scene. I loved the ladder scene. And there was something about that was actually very emotional. Like, I felt that scene on a very deep level. Like, when they're crawling across it to get to the other side, it was intense. But also at the same time, when you see what happens, it was like kind of gut-wrenching to me personally. Like, I felt like it was like a punch. I felt that scene. And there is some really cool messaging in this as well. For example, there's a scene in particular where the main character, Samantha, she gets this drink thrown on her by another girl that says that she was responsible for the killings in the fifth movie. And later in the film, they show that news clip, but they completely cut out the part where she got the pop thrown on her, and it made her set up to look like she was the villain. I'm just like, wow, I wonder how many times that has actually happened in real life where, someone is made to be villainized when they're actually not even a villain. And
99%.
Right? It was just, I found that so interesting, and I thought that was cool that they touched on that in the film, because I hadn't seen that before. And it really, that was one of the things that I loved about it. Where it fell apart for me is when the killers do get revealed, because I feel like they set up this film to, like, oh, the Ghostface, he goes in these public places and he'll kill like 4 people in one sitting, not like where he's hiding in the rest of the films. And that storyline didn't line up with the killers. Like, their motives were completely different. It just did not really fit for me as to why they were doing the killing, with the way that they set up this really cool Ghostface throughout the rest of the film. But overall, this was the first time I watched it. I typically do give films multiple chances. So this is all of my thoughts just coming from 10 o'clock this morning when I watched it for the first time. So it's like super fresh in my mind right now. But I would like to rewatch it and see what additional thoughts come through. But yeah, I thought it was very brutal. The kills were a lot of fun to watch. It was just that the cohesiveness of it didn't all flow for me. But that doesn't mean that I won't attempt to give it another watch later and maybe see something that I didn't before. But yeah, that's just my overall thoughts of it. It wasn't something I loved, and it's just a franchise that I've never really loved to begin with, though.
Cool. Do you think you liked it less or more than 5?
You know, I think I liked 5 more because I feel like, see, I am totally a legacy person. The legacy characters in 5, I think, were treated much more honorably and with more respect in the 5th one. In this one, I don't know, like with Gale, it just seemed like, I mean, obviously she's, you know, this bitch character who nobody really likes, and she's written all these books, and she's profited off of the fortune of, you know, other people's misery, which they touch on in the film as well. But, like, I don't know, the whole scene with her, that didn't really make sense to me. She has a boyfriend, and he, like, there's hardly, like, any screen time with him. There was no, like, really interaction. Like, he's not really in it very long. I think it was because they were putting the focus on her, and, like, this was her scene. But I don't know, something just felt off. But yeah, I definitely think I liked part 5 better, just because I feel it felt more honorable, more respectful.
I always get confused whether they're trying to portray Gale as likable or not, because I feel like every time we get a new Scream sequel, you find out, like, not off script, but like in the make believe world of between the movies, she did something again to, like, piss everybody off. But by the end of, like, the current movie, you're supposed to, like, be rooting for her because of her good actions to make up for it. But then when the next movie starts, oh yeah, I went and did that thing that everyone hates again. It's like at some point, and it kind of felt like they started to do in this movie where they're like, Gale, just get the hell out of here. No one wants you around. Like, stop showing up everywhere.
Like, it felt like they set it up to, you know, for her to be hated. So then, like, when her scene finally came, it's like, yeah, we don't really care. Like, what happens to you? Like, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. I was ready to see something happen that didn't happen, and then we all just put it back.
I actually cheered on watching it the first time during that scene when we thought something was going to happen. I cheered. I got some nasty looks in the theater, but I don't care. I am the complete opposite of Nikki. I come from a world where franchise characters, you know, don't really exist. I mean, Friday the 13th is my favorite franchise. The closest thing we have to a legacy character is Tommy Jarvis. And, you know, he was only in the 3 films and a fan film after that, but still. I'm very okay. I think it's great when a legacy character can get killed off. I mean, that's part of the strength I felt for stuff like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead when those shows first started out, is that nobody was safe. That didn't matter. I mean, Game of Thrones kills its biggest star in season 1. How huge was that at the time? So I am very on board for it. Like I said, I felt that this particular Scream trilogy that we're in the middle of now would have done what the new Star Wars trilogy did and just offed all of the fucking legacy characters, because ultimately we don't need them anymore. The story has evolved beyond them. I mean, how shitty must Courtney Cox feel that one of the only reason Gale Weathers still appears in these movies is to get punched in the face? That's just silly. Like, those are the only scenes I enjoy Gale Weathers in, is when she's getting punched in the face, because she fucking deserves it. So, I mean, I understand the confusion between, you know, are they trying to make her likable? Are they trying to make her not likable? But ultimately, for somebody like me, I just want to see her just get offed. You know, I want to see the franchise move beyond the legacy characters. That's the thing, is that sometimes legacy characters can be an anchor. They can hold the franchise back, and they're not letting the franchise kind of grow, sprout its own wings, and become its own thing. I mean, that's probably why this is one of my favorite Scream movies, is no Sidney. No Sidney, no Dewey. Fucking awesome.
Especially at this stage in the franchise, because at least I would say, like, 1 through 3, maybe even 4, there was a little more justification because we were still dealing with characters that kind of grew with Gale Weathers, because going all the way back to the first, Gale was like earlier in her career, and I think the Woodsboro murders I think were like her big break to begin with, but now it's like these characters have much less attachment to Gale Weathers to begin with, so it's like Gale showing up to like just magically help. It's like, man, these are basically kids now, and you're like well into middle age. Like, they don't want you. You're not their friends. You're not their peers. They don't even want you around helping. But my last question for general thoughts. This is a question I could have waited till the end of the episode, but I just want to ask it now. Last I checked, we're looking at like a record box office opening for the franchise. What do you think that means going forward for like any negotiations bringing Sidney, or aka Nev Campbell, back? Because I would say before they saw the money this made on opening weekend, they might have like been thinking, okay, how do we get her back in the future? But now, do you think there's less importance like from the writers and the studios to even give in to any demand? Like, and that's assuming all the stories were correct, where it was a money issue, where Nev thought she was being disrespected with the offer, and they had to like rewrite some of the movie without her character in it. But now it seems like the appetite for Scream movies have transcended like the legacy characters, right? Because I don't think Gale being in it like brought people out, right? I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it's just more the strength of the franchise itself, and the fact that Sidney, yes, her character gets a mention, but there was nothing really beyond that. Yet the movie was highly successful on its opening weekend, so you've got to think like now the leverage is back on the studio side, probably, as far as negotiations go. So what do you guys think about that?
Apparently, Mike forgot the entire conversation that we had about this 14 months ago when we reviewed Scream 5. I predicted this. I predicted that Scream 6 would be the highest grossing Scream movie, and that once that would happen, legacy characters are fucked. And look what happened. Oh, man, it's so good to be right. Yeah, this franchise does not need legacy characters, period. This movie proved it. 2 of the 3 major legacy characters were not here, and it turns out to be a couple of our favorite Scream movies. A couple of us here. So, yeah, I think, the money speaks. Money speaks louder than any action that you can do in this world. And if this movie turns out to be the highest grossing Scream movie ever, goodbye, Gale Weathers. and I'm here for it. I am so here for it. That doesn't bode well for her character going forward, as far as either just being in the movie or surviving it. Honestly, I think they should use her as the cold open kill in 7. I mean, I'm assuming we're going to get a Scream 7 after the success of this one. I say make her the cold open kill. And then finally, we're away from all the legacy characters, at least the original 3 legacy characters, and we can move on. We can move on with the franchise. I mean, the franchise is already doing a great job of moving on as it is. And now I kind of understand why I was so down on Scream 5, because just constantly going back to Sidney and Gale when this isn't their story. Scream 5 is not Sidney or Gale's story, period. Anyone who says that does not fucking understand the movie that they watched. This movie is about Sam and Tara. They are the catalyst for this movie, not Sidney, not Gale, and obviously not Dewey. So hopefully the filmmakers now understand that and will, kind of shed that fear of losing their legacy characters. Yeah, fuck it. Kill Gale in the opening scene of the next one. That nothing would make me happier. Nothing.
Except Sidney showing back up and getting killed too. And then
no, I never want to see Sidney again. I like the concept of Sidney has separated herself from this whole situation. She's like, okay, 25 years of this shit is enough. I'm out. I'm moving with my family and I'm done with it. I think that is the best possible ending Sidney could ever fucking get. Leave it at that. Leave it alone. Just never bring Sidney back. Maybe a cameo, but even then, it just seems like it's going to be ham-fisted and unnecessary. So, and I'm probably saying the opposite of what the hardcore Scream franchise fans are saying. I'm sure many of them are like, oh, I wish Sidney was in this. And it's like, why? What for what? Just to be an extra body, or just to be another nosy neighbor poking around this investigation? It feels pointless. And yeah, Gale. Why was Gale in this fucking movie? As I already said, to get punched in the face by a new character. That's literally it. I saw no point in her character here. And yes, I agree with Nikki. It's like, why even introduce that boyfriend character? Like, why not just have Gale alone in her apartment? Why, introduce the fact that she has this big buff new boyfriend who does nothing? I'm not even sure if he has a line in the movie. I think just the phone call, I think, is the only line he has. Oh, it's for you. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that was just a waste of casting, a waste of time. We don't even get to see his kill, so it's a waste of a kill. So, this was the entire scene was pointless. And the only way they could have redeemed that scene was to fucking off Gale Weathers, and they don't have the balls to do it. So that's upsetting.
The only justification I could see for needing Sidney back at some point, not even in a 7, but just somewhere down the road, is if they ever resurrect the Stu isn't actually dead theory and he's doing some type of cult thing, because then it would make sense. Like, Stu going after Sidney would make sense because they're actually from the same era. But unless they're going to ever resurrect that storyline, which I'm not even sure they would, then I don't see why any of these new killers really care about Sidney that much. Because we've already done kind of like the hybrid, like, new characters, but Sidney would be a bonus. Like, we've done that already. So I don't see why these new killers would really even care about Sidney. And Sidney coming back would almost just be her making the decision to interject herself in a situation that she doesn't even need to be involved in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was kind of like 5.
I don't care if legacy characters get killed. Where it comes down to for me is like how it's done. Like, sometimes when a legacy character is killed, it really adds a different element to the story that actually, makes it go, like, has a new spin on it, or like revamps a film in some way. And I just feel like if you're going to kill off legacy characters and, do it in an honorable way, then I feel like they should all be treated that way. And I don't feel like that was really the case in this film.
Agreed.
Yep. Dawn, you got any opinion on that? Sidney coming back, or what? I don't even remember what my original question was anymore.
It was about the legacy characters, whether they come back or not.
Yeah, I'm just about done with keeping them around for no reason. I mean, you guys have said it best. I mean, I've tried interjecting, but as soon as I actually tried to, you guys actually said what I was going to. So, keeping them around is just, reminders of the past that don't need to be there. You guys we've moved on already. I think 4 effectively ended everything. Just, completely move yourself away from that and just, start something new. What you did with Dewey was great. That was a fine first step. If you're going to bring, Sidney and Gale back in 7, they've got to go. I mean, there is nothing that they need to do. They have no need to be in the film other than the opening body. And, if you're going to whack them off, just, do it together. Like, have it be a double cold open. Like, you knock the both of them off together. That would be the only reason why I want them back. But yeah, there's very, very little need to keep them around as much as they are. For me, the only thing I would put forth is that I don't want this new group to be the group that from the original trilogy where all of them keep surviving. If they're going to do 7, I demand one of them to be gone. I don't want this to be a case where you're going to have 3-4 people survive every film every time for no reason. If you're going to keep the legacy characters of this group together, I want one of them gone in 7.
Makes sense. Yeah, like I said, it's like I wouldn't 100% be opposed to Sidney returning. It just has to be for a good reason. I don't want her just kind of like showing up to say like, oh, hey, I decided to help again. Like, 'cause especially now that the way I don't know. I kind of think Venom's onto something because it's not just the fact that she was not in the movie, but the way they kind of wrote her character out. They didn't go into a long explanation. It was just, hey, she has a family now. She wants to be far away from any of this bullshit. So you can't just turn around. I mean, I guess you could if they just don't care, but it'd be kind of silly to turn around in 7 where Ghostface is still after like the new characters, and then Sydney just change. Like there would have to be something so catastrophic about what's going on with these new characters for them just to like kind of ignore that dialogue in 6 where she's like, she don't want no part of this. She wants to move on with her life. Oh, never mind.
Here's the way you do this, actually, and this could be, rather stupid, but Gail's wedding, she invites Sid, and you knock the both of them off together.
I think men are going to avoid Gale Weathers like the plague after this. They keep dying off. I think Gail's going to have to turn into a lesbian to be in a relationship.
Like I said, it could be kind of stupid, but I mean, that would probably be like my way of going about it, is that it's Gail's wedding. She's about to finally move on, settle off with, do like Sydney does and just like settle down, move on. And, bam, Ghostface takes the both of them out together at the same time.
Yeah, honestly, I just don't want to see them again, like even to die. Maybe Gail, just because she left kind of a bad taste in my mouth with this movie. But like I said, I love this end for Sydney. Leave it. Fucking leave it. Why can't a horror movie character have a happy ending? I mean, obviously, it's not going to be that happy. She's going to be traumatized for the rest of her life and always looking over her shoulder, blah, blah, blah. But to constantly be bringing these people back, I mean... Did we all already forget Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 or 21, whatever fucking year that was? And when they brought back Sally just to fucking die, and it was like the worst scene in the whole fucking movie? Nah.
It was.
Nah. Just keep Sydney away. Sydney, wherever you are, stay. Get a new horror franchise. Go work with Mike Flanagan or something. I don't know. But yeah, you're done with Scream. I beg you. I fucking beg you, please be done with Scream, for fuck's sake. I was
gonna say, if Sydney is deep in the rural forest and woods, she can start a Wrong Turn reboot franchise. Then I guess.
There you go. But yeah, that's just like I said, I'm the guy that doesn't give a rat's ass about legacy characters, though. So of course I'm gonna have that opinion. I'm probably not in the majority there, and that's fine.
Well, I mean, I feel like they did a little, like the smallest amount possible to at least justify her not being in it anymore. That way going forward, it's because, like they could have, because of the change. I said from the beginning, the fact that they changed the location out of Woodsboro gave you a built-in justification for no legacy characters to be in it, period, because hey, it makes sense why everyone can't just follow them to New York. So that made sense. And then with the added dialogue of why she wasn't there on top of just the location change, that kind of gives them an out to just say she's done. If that is the case and she's done, hey, they gave a decent justification of why she's not going to be in the future. To me, the only thing that would make sense is if, like, the Ghostface killer went to her. Like, if it starts happening in Woodsboro again or whatever city. Like, and that's the other thing. That's like, I don't even know if the next one would take place still in New York, because if they're going to school, because I think the next one starts filming later this year. So I'm assuming not that much time is going by. So if they're still in school in New York, it would make sense to still be there. But hey, it doesn't have to be. But yeah, it just makes sense. Like, they're not going to be, everyone, legacy characters aren't going on road trips every sequel to be like, oh, we got to show up wherever they are. That doesn't make much sense.
I honestly, though, I hope the next one's in New York. I think this movie did a really, really good job of giving us that sense of New York. I'm from Connecticut. I've been to New York many, many times. And, you don't get to see a lot of movies that really, really play into, being a New Yorker and living there. Like, I feel like the subway scene here was awesome. The way that they actually are able to put that sense of claustrophobia and even paranoia because there's so many people with the Ghostface costume on. I just feel like those were great scenes. The bodega, I mean, what is more New York than a bodega? And I fucking love that scene. I thought that scene was really well done, even though I am a little sick of the trope of people getting a gun on a villain and then calling them before they shoot. That happens twice in this fucking movie, and it's annoying both goddamn times. It's like, why can't you just pull the trigger? Why do you got to get their attention? Like, you want them to know who shot them before they die? It doesn't matter. Just fucking shoot. So, yeah. I mean, there's going to be horror tropes in here that, piss me and many people off. The movie is still got fucking weapon droppers. We're in the 6th fucking Scream movie, and people are still weapon droppers. God damn, Gale Weathers got the upper hand on that killer with the cast iron skillet. And what's the first fucking thing she does? Drops the skillet and runs. Are you fucking kidding me? Have you not survived 5 of these fucking movies already? And you're still going to be a weapon dropper? Holy shit, does that take me out of the movie? It just irks the shit out of me. Especially with these legacy characters that know there's probably not one killer. 9 times out of 10, there's more than one killer. So take this one out, disorientate the group, the villainous group, and maybe make it a little bit easier to take out the remaining ghost faces, if you will. But nah, let's just, the black dude does it, Chad, when he hits the one guy with the camera. Does he continue to hit him with a camera? No, he runs. And then, what do you call it? Samantha did it with the wood block. The wood block with the knives in it. All the knives were taken out, obviously. She goes and she hits the killer with the wood block. And then what's the first fucking thing she does? Drops the wood block and tries to run away. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with people anymore? How brutal does a killer have to be before you sit there and bash their fucking brains in? Is that so fucking hard? I know, I'm harping about the same shit I harp about every 5th episode, but god damn it, I am fucking sick of weapon droppers. Fuck all of you.
Well, especially when you realize who 2 of the killers in this are, and you're just like, you couldn't have taken them out? Come on now.
Well, that's the thing. That's every Scream movie. Almost every Scream movie, the killers are teenagers. It's just, people of the same age group of the main cast of the movie. It's rare that we get someone who's an actual fucking adult. I mean, obviously we got Scream 2. I don't remember how old the director guy from 3 was, but yeah, it's like, oh man, how many of these fucking movies do we have to go through before characters realize, okay, I'm not going to stop bashing their head in until I see brain matter. That's when you drop your weapon and run away. When you see their brain spilled on the floor. Well,
especially in this franchise, because if I can talk, I'll explain myself. To the credit of this franchise, they haven't gone down like but could the new Ghostface actually be supernatural? Like, they've always kept it grounded that no, it's usually a mastermind and an idiot sidekick. So just the fact that these people have been through this enough to where if you just keep bashing them in the head, they will die. It's not like a Jason situation where no matter what you do, they're going to get up. It's like, they're just people. And most of the time it's your peers. So it's like, even just a few good whacks to where they're busted open and bleeding, they're going to die if you just keep doing it. Now, I know we've had I think a Ghostface with a bulletproof vest on before, but that's not melee protecting, especially if you take to me, it would be one hit, they're KO'd, I'd remove the mask and then keep bashing them because I want to know who it is, but I also want them dead.
Oh no, I'll bash them first, and if I take the mask off and I don't recognize them, oh well.
When the credits were going and it at the very end and it shows Ghostface and it says Roger Jackson, I'm like, who's that? Because when you get the killer reveal, it's like, that's not any of those people. And he, as brutal as Ghostface was with the killer reveal, they the brutalness of it, it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, that doesn't really add up there.
I think the brutality of the kills just kind of stems from the fact that this is a revenge plot. You know, the motivation of the killers in part 5 wasn't necessarily revenge. They were just douchebag film students, blah, blah, blah. This one, there's actual revenge motivation. And especially when it's a family member, I think that could make the brutality, you know, because that's how homicide detectives know when a crime is personal. If they just completely decimate the body, it was probably personal. If they just stabbed them once or twice and left, then it's probably not personal. So for me, it makes sense.
Well, maybe the main killer out of the 3, I guess I could see doing all of the brutality in the grocery store, but the other 2, no.
You know, I've always had a question about these, you know, high school and college age kids being able to be that brutal. It's like, I mean, there was something wrong with you before, you know, Scream or Stab or whatever didn't do this to you. You were already pretty fucking twisted. I mean, going all the way back to Billy and Stu, you know, you know, my mommy cheated on someone and then she left town. Boo hoo. Now, shut the fuck up. That's still not a fucking cause to murder, you know, up-teen people. So, I mean, I've always had a problem with the motivation of the killers in every single Scream movie. The first one is probably the one I would have the least amount with. This one, at least because it was so fresh, it does make sense to me. You know, I mean, this is only what I assume about a year removed from Scream 5. So it would make sense that this family would, you know, go to the lengths that they go to do what they do here. And the fact that maybe they get a little overzealous with the kills, like I said, I'm going to cut them a little slack just knowing what their kind of what their motivation was for all this.
Yeah.
And for whatever it's worth, it made the movie better.
This one definitely kind of followed the Scream 2 revenge thing. I've heard people, and maybe Venom, because you saw it a second time, you're really able to dig into it, but it definitely felt like it was mirroring a lot of stuff from Scream 2. Like even like something I alluded to earlier about like the one character when she gets in, I forgot her name, but she's the one that does the kind of subtext commentary about, oh, we're in a franchise now, and when a franchise is this and it's this, that, and the other, and I'm like, this sounds awfully familiar. What I heard in Scream 2 about how sequels are bigger and no one like it kind of mirrored it, and I was like, okay. I thought she was gonna build more onto that, but it kind of just came off like a retread.
Absolutely did. Especially if you're, you know, a horror fan and you've seen these movies more than once. You're obviously going to remember, you know, whether it's an homage from the director filmmaker, or it's just a flat ripoff to fill in a couple of minutes of the movie, whatever. Or maybe they just feel that that's a Scream trope, you know, the monologue. Be it the monologue at the beginning where it's someone going over the rules, or the monologue at the end from the villain about why they're doing what they do. It seems like it's a trope.
And that's why I reiterate that, like, to me, the most fun elements of this movie are what it did different, and my least favorite things are what it kind of did the same. And I thought like the strength of the movie was the fact that it's not in Woodsboro, all the kind of different set pieces and the stuff they got to play with. Like I think it was Nikki, unless someone brought it up even before her, but like the subway scene was cool. That's something you couldn't do in Woodsboro because obviously they don't have that kind of public transit. They don't have subways there. The kind of apartments, the already claustrophobic space of those small apartments was cool. And just, you know, the bigger city, kind of like the fact that like there's all these people dressed up as Ghostface and just other characters on the subway, like it's a normal thing in a big city where people don't pay much attention to it. In the convenience store, when someone walks in a Ghostface costume, no one really thinks of that in a big city until, obviously once things start up, then that's different. But just someone in a costume of a serial killer, like no one looks twice at that because that's just, you have so many different personality types and people from walks of life in big cities that you just learn to like not judge that kind of stuff. Where in Woodsboro you might stick out.
Yeah, it's Halloween too, so I don't think in any city.
Yeah, well, I would say on a subway in New York, there's probably a lot more scary things going on than a Ghostface costume.
Valid, absolutely.
But yeah, I really like. Obviously, once the two characters got separated, you're like, okay, something's gonna go down. But I still thought it was like an effective way to do the scene. I do have some questions with like the main killer in this, or the mastermind. Like some of the stuff when he's like, when they're gonna go back and forth at the end, like, well, how did this? And he's like, I switched the bodies. I'm like, wait, you what? Like, okay, how did you do that? You're telling me that the kids, like your kids of all kids, are dead, and the whole, like, you had time to do that? Like, I don't really buy that, but I mean, that seemed like a little too Scooby-Doo to me.
Oh, very much. I mean, he kind of tipped his hat really early, too. I don't know if you guys even noticed, but I noticed it on the second watch. After they came out of the apartment and the detective is talking about how both of my kids are dead, he's not crying. There's no tears coming out of his face. At one point, he even wipes his eye like he's wiping a tear away, but there's no tears there. Like, literally, there's no moisture there whatsoever. So I thought that was kind of cool that they kind of tipped their hat there. Obviously, there's red herrings throughout the movie. You know, Danny was a big red herring early on. Obviously, all the friends and roommates and everything else. But yeah.
I even got suspicious when when there was a scene at the police station where him and Kirby were talking. I think she was like sharing some intel that she had or something, and then she leaves, and then like he's like, call up Atlanta and tell me everything you, because to me there was nothing really that made her suspicious up to that point for law enforcement. So I was like, why is he trying to dig on her? Because she hasn't really done anything off the level to me. So the fact that he was trying to investigate and come up, I was like, that's interesting. But yeah, I wasn't totally shocked. Like I'm not someone that's like, oh, I called it, but I just wasn't that surprised when it turned out to be him.
I called one of the killers. Oh, actually, I'm on a 2-movie streak for picking one of the killers. I never pick them all because obviously they throw enough swerves in there that you're not going to be able to pick them all. But yeah, I picked out Richie in the last one, and I picked out our boy in this one. Not the cop, the son. Like literally the first shot he was in, I'm like, oh, there's one of the killers. And I did the exact same thing with Scream 5, only because, the actor who played Ralph, or is that his name? Yeah, Kirsch in the first in Scream 5 was like a big name. And I picked him out as one of the killers before I even saw the movie. When I saw him on the poster, I'm like, oh, he's one of the Ghostfaces. Yeah. I didn't pick one out this time because there was no, big names that were new to the cast here. But yeah, as soon as he showed up and smiled, I'm like, that motherfucker looks like Evan Peters. He's one of the killers.
the other thing about Scream movies specifically is whenever somebody tries to justify their absence with an alibi, it doesn't matter, because if there's multiple killers, it doesn't mean that they necessarily are the one that killed everybody. So as soon as he was like, no, I was in a library with hundreds of people, well, yeah, but it could have been the other person doing that killing that everyone's talking about. So that kind of made it a little suspicious too. The only reason I kind of didn't go with the two, I guess, underlings as much as like other people did, because I just figured they're in it so little and inconsequential that like I just thought the whole they're not really who you thought they were was a little weak sauce, because I'm like, well, I didn't think they were anybody because they weren't even in the movie for more than 5 minutes. Like, you could have just pulled someone off the subway randomly and been like, they're the killer, and it would have had almost the same effect on me.
Oh, it's true. They could have done a Friday the 13th OG where literally the killer is someone we've never seen in the movie, and it would have made just as much sense as what we got here. So, yeah, I'm all right with that.
I guessed one of the killers in this one, too. I guessed the cop, but I did not see the twist with the other two coming at all.
Yeah, definitely, since they don't even allude to that relationship whatsoever. Yeah, it's hard to pick that one out. Definitely. All right. So I guess we could talk about that. I don't know that I really want to do a walkthrough for this one. It's a 2-hour movie with a lot of stuff in here, but there are some set pieces that I kind of want to discuss. Obviously, we'll go in order. We'll start with the cold open. I fucking love this cold open. I thought this was I love the original cold open. I thought it was great, especially, you know, you got such a big name starring in it and she's taken out. That's awesome. But this cold open, the fact that we actually get a swerve in the cold open, I thought was fucking brilliant. You know, I mean, obviously, our cold open, you know, we see Samara Weaving playing, you know, a college professor. She's at a bar waiting for her date. It's a blind date, probably a Tinder thing, who knows? But basically, she's at the bar waiting. She gets a phone call from the guy that she's supposed to be on a date with. He plays that he's lost, that he can't find the bar, that he can't find the restaurant, blah, blah, blah. She gets a call from him telling him this, and then he ends up luring her outside somehow, basically saying, you know, what's the color of the front of the building? Is there an alley around that I could potentially, you know, cut through to get to the restaurant? Blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Samara Weaving, who is fucking gorgeous, by the way, god damn it, is somehow lured into this alley. And of course, once she steps foot into the alley, the voice on the phone changes from the guy that she's been talking to our friend Roger Jackson, who, by the way, no one's really mentioned this yet. I think this is Roger Jackson's best work as Ghostface. I think his voice work here is fucking stellar. It's great in the original. Honestly, it's great in all the movies. He does a great job. But this one really, really stuck with me, his voice work in this one. So kudos, Roger Jackson. And like I said, she is Samara Weaving's character, lured out. She's knifed in the alley, stabbed about a dozen times, blah, 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 by a Ghostface killer who does have the voice modulator, so he obviously sounds like him. But then what we get is something we've never seen before. We see the killer take his mask off in the cold open. And it turns out to be one of our surviving characters from Scream 5, one of the film nerds. I actually forgot his name. Not that I care that much, but anyway, yeah. Basically, one of the film nerds from Scream 5 who survived basically made the decision, both of them actually, made the decision to follow Tara and Sam to New York to quote unquote finish Richie's movie. Now, even though it was never really implied that they had anything to do with Richie in the last movie or any connection to any, nefarious acts, they somehow just decided to become serial killers. And you could tell it's not our standard Ghostface because he's very sloppy about it. Because this alley that they're in, A, it's not that dark. B, it's not that long. Like you can see both ends of it very clearly. And C, there's people walking back and forth across both ends of the alley. So there's a little suspension of disbelief there, especially with the scream that Samara lets out. That's a fucking epic scream that she let out, and no one heard it. Again, suspension of disbelief, but yeah. So we end up following our quote-unquote Ghostface back to his apartment. He changes back into his normal clothes. He goes back to his apartment. We find out that it's him and his friend, the film school guys from Part 5. But then he gets a phone call, and the phone call is supposedly from his partner, Greg. That's right, Greg was his name. But when he answers the phone, it's Roger Jackson's voice. It's the Ghostface voice. And he gets pissed off, saying, blah, blah, blah. I thought we agreed not to use the voice on each other, but instantly he starts to realize that I don't think I'm actually speaking to Greg. You see kind of the nervousness on his face start to build. Eventually he does, they end up talking about their past, and when the person on the phone correctly, relays the story to our first killer of how they met, how they knew each other, blah, 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 you could see kind of the relief in his face, but then the killer wants to play warmer, colder. Of course, the warmer, colder game. If you're looking for something, the closer you get to it, you're warmer. The farther away, you're colder. I don't know why I'm explaining this because fucking everybody knows what that game is. But obviously, they're playing the colder, warmer game for Greg's location. The guy on the phone is still claiming to be Greg. And of course, once the guy walks by the refrigerator, he says, warmer, warmer, you're red hot, blah, blah, blah. He opens the fridge, and there is Greg in pieces in the refrigerator. Decapitated, arms and legs are cut out so that he could, fit in there. Pretty gnarly scene, some good gore there. And then we see the real Ghostface show up and take out this guy. And literally the last line right before the title card, I fucking love, where the victim is saying, but I need to finish Richie's movie. Who's going to finish Richie's movie? And Ghostface just says, who gives a fuck about movies? And just cuts his throat, and it goes to the title card. I thought that was some great commentary there, some cool meta commentary. But let's get into it. Guys, someone chime in here. What did you think of this cold open? Am I off base that I think it's one of the best ones, or what do you think? Anybody jump in?
It doesn't rival the cultural impact of one. I mean, I still think that one's legendary for a reason, but other than that, I'm right there. The twist reveal, I mean, knocking off Samara Weaving would not necessarily be that much of a shock. You've done it every single movie. You get the big celebrity and knock them off. Ooh, wow, whoop-de-doo, you're so original. Yeah, next in line, please. But it's the twist reveal, the two killers, the revelation about the one taking it off in the beginning at that scene, twisting it around, making it think that, oh, this is going to be, we're going to know who it is the whole time. Is it going to be, are they going to know who it is? And yeah, all of that plays off really well. And I really like the way that it handled that. But yeah, probably right after the original, maybe a hair above 2, because I really like the movie scene. The movie theater in 2 is really cool. I like that. But yeah, I think other than, 1 just being as culturally impactful as it is, I still think that one's the tops. But other than that, it's right there.
Agreed.
I want to apologize to Roger Jackson for not knowing who he was. I'm so sorry. It just goes to show Scream franchise is totally not my franchise. But yeah. Just wanted to put that out there. Totally love the iconic Ghostface voice. So want to give a shout out to him. And sorry that I did not recognize the name when I saw it in the credits. Yeah, I thought the opening was different. I really enjoyed how they flipped it on its head. It wasn't like starting initially with the Ghostface to start with, which kind of leaves an even more scary element to the film. It's like, how many Ghostface are in the world, like the fact that it opens with Samara Weaving getting killed and the guy takes his mask off right away. Like you never see that in the opening of any of the Scream films. It hadn't been done before, and I thought that was really cool. As the scene progresses, when he's back in his apartment, and then he opens the fridge and you see the brutality that is in there. That had never been done before in a Scream film either. And it was like 2 Scream killers talking to each other at the exact same time. And how it all pans out, overall for me, I guess I would have liked to see a little more with it, a little more of connection, but also because the Scream franchise is not one that I know a lot about in particular, maybe that's why I didn't connect with it as much. So after I saw it, I was like, okay, that was different, but I wanted more from it. And that's kind of what my opening thoughts were when I first saw it today.
Yeah, for me, so I thought the kill of Samara Weaving itself was okay, not great, but everything that happened after that, when we get the fact that Ghostface takes off the mask, so right up front we're like, whoa, that's not normal for this to happen. And the ensuing scene, back at his, I don't know if it's an apartment or college dorm or whatever, and then he gets the call from another Ghostface killer, and that whole interaction, I thought that's what really got me kind of hyped, because I was like, oh, okay, now we're really doing something we haven't seen before, especially this early in the movie. It's kind of setting the table that okay, you can be one of the killers and not even be almost being used as a pawn, because that there's always kind of been the pattern where you have the mastermind and then you're using pawns, but usually even the pawn killers make it to the end for like the final reveal, where in this case it's like, oh wait, so this person's good enough to actually be using people more on a short-term basis to do things. So I thought that was really cool. I'll admit though, like the opening where I like the setup, like Samara Weaving on. It looks like she was probably on like a Tinder date or something, because she didn't know the person was waiting. But as she starts walking down like the alley, I was kind of like I don't know if she'd be willing to do that. But other than that, like the actual stabbing, the killing itself was brutal as hell. And so yeah, I mean, I liked where the scene went, definitely. Once we got past just the killing itself, I liked how they really changed it up. And to me, like the fact that the movie set the table like that got it off to a great start, because that really kind of implanted the thought in my head, oh, we're going to get our oddball entry of the franchise, right? All the big franchises have that. Nightmare on Elm Street, they did it with part 2. Friday, 5? We can go on and on. But the fact that the setup felt so much different in narrative this time around, I was like, wow, hopefully that means they're going full steam ahead with like, this is going to be our oddball entry. Unfortunately, it didn't quite get as oddball and kind of off the path of the main franchise, but like I said, there were still many elements that were where I liked it. So yeah, I would say overall, yes, it was a good cold opening.
Awesome. All right, next, bodega scene. Now this is one that obviously, if you watch the trailers, you were familiar with the scene coming up. I had no idea it was coming. I am a huge fan of bodegas. I love the fact that most bodegas have like a pet cat that just walks around freely in the stores. So it's like an iconic thing of New York that I just love seeing in films, even though we don't see a cat in this one. But the bodega scene is set up with basically Sam and Tara see a news report about the murder of Samara Weaving's character, and then the two film students, the two film school guys. Let's see, who is it? It was Sam, who asks one of the new characters, Quinn, her roommate, to call her father, who just happens to be a homicide detective here in New York, to call him and see if he knows anything about this. Because instantly, as soon as she sees the report of a murder and multiple Ghostface masks being found, she instantly wants to leave New York, obviously against Tara's wishes. So they end up, like I said, she ends up speaking to the detective. The detective ends up finding her ID at the murder scene, obviously left there by the real killer. So the detective asks her to go to the police station. Obviously, Tara goes ahead with her, because Tara and Sam are pretty much inseparable. Even with Tara having her angsty little moments where she's kind of sick of her sister kind of being a helicopter sister, but ultimately she does end up appreciating it and understanding why she does it. She's the older sister. It's her job. So anyway, while Sam and Tara are walking to the police station to speak to the detective, they get a phone call. It's, of course, from our favorite mass killer, or at least our favorite mass killer in this movie, where, you get the general spiel of, I'm going to kill you. No, I'm going to kill you, blah, 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 the back and forth, because obviously Tara and Sam have already survived this once, so they're confident they can survive it again. And then just out of nowhere, out on the street, granted, it's not the middle of the day, it's nighttime at this point, but yeah, right there in the middle of the street, one of the Ghostface killers shows up, and I think this one is the cop. This is part of the fun of the Scream movies, even if you're not a big fan of these movies, to try to figure out which of the eventually unmasked killers actually performed which kills. I think this was the cop because of how proficient he was with that shotgun. I don't know if the other two, being as young as they are, if they would be that fucking proficient with a 12 gauge. I mean, the person who was firing that thing has fired that gun multiple times before. On top of the fact that when he killed the bodega owner, he did it with one arm. He held out the shotgun with one arm. I don't see the two younger killers being able to do that. I don't know if anybody here has ever shot a 12 gauge shotgun. If you don't have great arm strength and you try to do that with one arm, you're going to break your damn arm. Like, period. It's just going to break it. This is why I'm saying I think this is the cop. But anyway, not that it matters much. We all see it in the trailer. Ghostface follows them into the bodega. He ends up killing a couple of the customers that are there. The store owner, the bodega owner, pulls out a shotgun from behind the counter, and this is the first idiot with a gun in this movie because, of course, rather than just get the drop on him and pull the fucking trigger, he's got to say, hey, like, why? Why the fuck do you have to get the attention of the person you're about to shoot? I'll never fucking understand that. But again, it's a horror trope that I have to live with. So, of course, after calling out, hey, Ghostface turns around, sees the gun, instantly lunges out of the way. The store owner shoots, misses. The girls try to go out the back door, which is locked, and they ask if he's got any keys. In the process of him pulling out his keys, Ghostface reappears, disarms him, and pretty much blows his brains out with the shotgun. Cool little scene, and quick little scene, too. Like, I like how they didn't drag it out. Like, it's a quickie. I mean, I would probably say 3 or 4 minutes maybe at the most for this scene. It's a quick one. They don't linger. There is a little bit of a cat and mouse in it, but, I mean, we're talking like maybe 5 to 10 seconds of some cat and mouse action. But, what you guys think about the bodega scene? Let's go with our guest first.
Yeah, I really dug this scene. I thought it was super cool. Because this was the scene, they briefly showed this in the trailer, and this was where I was like, okay, this is the Ghostface who is not messing around. Going into the bodega there was 5 people in there, not caring, and just killing whoever crosses his path. It was a very intense scene for me. I actually, from the looks of the trailer, I thought that it was Ghostface who walked into the bodega with a shotgun, but then when you watch the movie, you find out it's actually the cashier or the owner of the store who has the shotgun and starts shooting at Ghostface, and he somehow messes that up, and Ghostface gets the shotgun. It's completely flipped, and then you have Tara and Samantha fighting for their lives, crawling on the floor. It's a very intense scene. I thought this was one of the best scenes in the movies, or one of the best scenes in this film. Pretty much all the scenes with the killer I loved, but this one really stood out to me.
Mike or Don?
I'll go ahead and jump in and say, yeah, this is another example of this entry doing something a little different. I actually like the fact that Ghostface used the shotgun in the scene, but didn't necessarily keep it the whole time, because it kind of gives you a different flavor without just him. Because obviously, I think if he's walking around with a gun the whole time, that's going to bring a little unwanted attention. Like, that might cross the line of like, yeah, I think police might start going after you, trying to open carry on the streets of New York. But just for this scene specifically, I thought it was cool just to get that little bit of uniqueness to Ghostface killing.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes in the film, and it's actually, I think, the weakest. Like I said, most of the set pieces in here I really, really like, and yeah, the intensity behind it, the brazenness to just do it out in the open, not really care about what we've seen in the past. Ghostface would have usually, ducked away if people went out in the open. This one goes ahead and just, in a facility, takes them out of the shoppers, and then targets the clerk who, takes the gun off of him and shoots him, and then stalks him throughout. Yeah, it was really cool. I really liked it.
Nice. All right. So after the bodega scene, Sam and Tara go to the police station. They're interviewed there. They answer multiple questions. This is when we are reintroduced to Kirby. Hayden Panettiere is back, and she is now an FBI agent, or at least she claims to be. Basically saying that she has a vested interest in the Ghostface killings, and that as soon as she heard that there was potentially a new killer in town, she came out and pretty much assisted the police in any way she could. After this, Sam and Tara go home, and then we get the apartment attack. Another great scene where basically our core four, as they dub themselves in the movie, who are of course the Meek twins and Sam and Tara, are basically celebrating. Not so much celebrating, but they're drinking, they're being together, they're having the heartwarming speech of, oh, you're more than friends, you're family, blah 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 blah. And at that same moment, the cute guy from across the alley in the same apartment building, but across the alley in a different apartment, sees Ghostface in Quinn's bedroom and instantly tries to get Sam and Tara's attention, actually calls Tara on the phone. She decides not to answer because she's with her friends having a good time, blah, blah, blah. But then Danny is the name of the guy, the cute guy from across the alley, basically sends a mass text message to everyone showing a picture that he took of Ghostface in Quinn's bedroom. They all instantly, they start to hear rumbling noises in the room. At first, they think that it's her having sex because, she's kind of introduced as kind of the slutty character, sex positive, as she says it. And, so all the friends obviously are assuming that she's just having sex. But then once they receive the picture text, they realize that she's getting attacked. They stand outside of her door. No one actually goes towards the door. They're basically just going to wait for the killer to come out. But what ends up happening is when the killer comes out, he basically rushes or he throws Quinn's dead body at them. Basically, he's taken Quinn out, stabbed her multiple times, and he basically throws the bloody body at them. Let's see, I think it's Chad and Tara end up getting out of the apartment, and they think that everyone else is behind them, but what they didn't realize is that what's her name, Annika, who is Mindy's new girlfriend or love interest, I don't know if they're official, but whatever, basically she ends up getting attacked by Ghostface. She ends up getting killed. This is the first victim that lives way fucking longer than she should have. Listen to this, folks. Ghostface stabs her in the midsection, dead center in the stomach. He twists the knife about 180 degrees. Then he twists the knife back to its original position and pulls up, making the gash, a good 6 to 8 inches long. And this girl ends up surviving for like another 10 or so minutes with her heart rate pumping. That's the other thing. The adrenaline is going so fast that she's got to be losing blood at a ridiculous rate. But she still is able to survive that. Mindy ends up taking a knife to the arm, I believe. So she's slightly injured as well. The three remaining, like I said, Tara and Chad ended up getting out of the apartment. Ghostface closes the apartment door and locks it behind them so they can't get back in. He or she, well, no, obviously it's he for obvious reasons that we'll discuss later. The Ghostface killer chases the remaining three. Like I said, chases them into a side bedroom where they're able to put up a dresser to block the door. Cute guy Danny from across the alley has a ladder that he extends across the alley, turning it into a little bridge. Sam is the first one to go across the bridge. No major problems. Obviously, there's some, vertigo to deal with because they are up so high. It looks like they're maybe on the 4th or 5th floor, maybe, of like a 10-story apartment building. Nothing too major. So Sam gets across, and then Mindy then goes across the ladder, which leaves what's her name, Annika, back still in the apartment with Ghostface still smashing at the door trying to get in. As soon as Annika, is it Annika? Yeah, it is Annika. As soon as Annika gets on the ladder and tries to traverse the ladder to go across the way, that's when Ghostface finally gets into the apartment or into the bedroom, and he starts shaking the ladder, obviously. Now, this girl, like I said, she's bleeding out. She should have died 5 minutes ago, but again, whatever. She's having trouble holding on to the ladder. Ghostface is shaking the ladder violently. Finally, Annika is unable to hold on the ladder, falls down to the lower level, hits her head on a dumpster, and we get a great fucking gore shot of her, basically her caved in face as she's lying on the ground, still bleeding from the midsection, but bleeding from multiple parts now. So Annika is now gone. So we lose two characters in this scene, Annika and Quinn. And our main characters basically just leave and decide to go back to the police station. So, based on some of the other set pieces, this one is kind of tame, but it does get pretty gory with Annika's death. What you guys think?
They left us speechless.
I guess, yeah. The fucking kill was so awesome. Everybody.
I was waiting on you guys. I thought somebody was going to jump in. So fuck it. Yeah, I think the survival mode of keeping the love interest alive went too far, but I think the brutality kind of overmatches it. The intensity of Ghostface repeatedly trying to get into the room, hacking the door. You see like the marks he makes trying to cut the hole open enough for him to leverage the door to get in. Again, it's another thing that the other Ghostface weren't known for, was that if they got away, they'd try to find a separate way in. Is that if you manage to barricade the door, they wouldn't just stand there and start hacking at it to open the door. They'd leave and try to find another way in. And standing there doing that kind of adds like an extra intensity to the whole sequence. Most of the setup kind of is a little problematic. I do think that there's a bit of it, the whole, it takes too long for, the others to notice what's happening. But other than that, I really like it. It's a pretty fun sequence. Like I said, I think the brutality and the suspense kind of overcomes the stupidity of it. Luckily, it's not as stupid as, some of the sequences in 5, but yeah, I had fun with it. Yeah, I generally had fun with it.
Nice. Anybody else want to chime in on this scene before we move on?
Yeah, I felt that Sam's boyfriend, I didn't really understand his character. I kind of feel like he was a filler character because she obviously didn't really care about him a whole lot, because he, like, when she runs into him, when he comes to the door and they're like kissing, she's like, no, somebody's gonna see it. She wants to keep their relationship secret. And then when he sees that Ghostface is in their apartment, he's trying to call her to warn her, to get out of there with all of them. And she goes, I'll talk to him later. And she just like ignores him and like shuts her phone off. And I'm like, whoa, like, does she really value him? And like, what is the point of this character? Like, he wasn't really in it a whole lot. The only thing I think of is that he was just that basis for that scene.
Honestly, I think he was probably just another red herring. Just another character for us to think is Ghostface, which I actually did think for a little while. Like, I actually, he was one of the first guys I picked out, but I'm glad I was wrong, because I don't know, those like well-built, chiseled guys are almost always made to be villainous in these kinds of movies. So I found it kind of refreshing that he was actually a good guy after all. So yeah, good on Danny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't even understand why she was so intent on keeping it a secret to begin with. I mean, it was like, is it really that big of a deal that you're hooking up with? Like, it seems like that's what everyone wanted for her. Maybe not necessarily him, but just her in general, to like get out there and kind of have some semblance of like a normal life. And that was part of it. I mean, maybe she was just still so insecure because of the events that happened in 5 that she didn't want to make it like a public big deal about it. But still, I'm just like, it seems like you're going to great lengths and efforts to like keep this a secret when I don't understand why. And maybe writing wise, they did that on purpose because, like you said, to make him a red herring, because, hey, if the viewers don't know that much about him, then you kind of have your built-in suspicion like automatically without even really having to write much about the character to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, the characters in the movie even did it, everybody who wasn't one of the core 4, they all instantly thought, oh, you're a prime suspect. So definitely a sense of paranoia in the film as well. Honestly, there's a sense of paranoia in every Scream film, other than the first one maybe, but yeah. Okay, so after the apartment attack, there's various scenes after this. Gail's introduced. Gail's back in town. Obviously, she gets punched in the face, blah, blah, blah. Her standard routine. But I guess one of the reasons that Gail is in this movie is because of her investigative journalism skills, because she is the first one to find the shrine.
Okay,
and the shrine is kind of...
Okay, here we go. This is what I said earlier about writing Gail out of the movie. This could have been Kirby's find completely, and you had no reason for Gail to be in this film. Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, the cop even said it. He even said, I left the information there for Kirby to find, but then Gail, had to stick her nose in there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. Definitely. It's like one of the only reasons for her to be here. And honestly, it was a moot point because we already have an FBI agent here who supposedly investigates, even though she never really truly figures out too much what's going on here. Probably, I mean, I hate to say it, one of the worst FBI agents I've ever seen portrayed on film. An adorable girl, but terrible FBI agent. She figured out nothing this whole movie. It was basically all, Sam, Tara, and the cop. All right, so the shrine, and what Gail finds is that the copycat killers from the beginning apparently had a old theater that they had rented out, and it's in a pretty shoddy neighborhood, so they figure that it's safe there, not going to have a lot of looky-loos around. And when they walk into the shrine, it is literally a shrine for Ghostface. Now, obviously, in this universe, it's a shrine to Stab, because it's all Stab gear. It's all the different, movie things from Stab. But then they actually have real Ghostface costumes. They actually have all 9 of the original Ghostface costumes from the real killers of the movie, of Scream. We see all the different knives that were used. At one point, Kirby even recognizes the knife that stabbed her in whatever one that she was in. Was that 3 or 4? See,
4.
I'm so not a fan of this franchise.
4.
Yeah, okay, 4. That was the one with the Culkin, right? Yeah, okay. So, the reveal of this shrine, normally this isn't something I would really like. I don't know why I enjoyed it here, but I really did like it. In this first scene, we don't find out the truth of who actually set up this room and why it's here. So I remember thinking, that seems a little flimsy that just these 2 guys literally just moved to New York a few months ago and had the time to set up this fucking shrine in an old theater. Like that's
Jigsaw.
another. Yeah,
Jigsaw
very
did it.
Jigsaw. Thank you. But yeah, so, we get the reveal of the shrine. We also see, we end up seeing Sam's psychiatrist get taken out. Basically, during one of the sessions that we watch with Sam and her psychiatrist, she actually talks about how it felt to kill Richie, a year ago in Woodsboro. And she says that it felt right and that bothers her. She has some, mental repercussions because of it, because she doesn't know how to feel. Like, she knows it's wrong to kill, but she also knows that it felt right to take out Richie. And of course it was. It's always the right thing to do. All the people that you potentially are saving that would have died at the hands of this killer, it's always worth it, what she did. But, obviously survivor guilt and other mental health issues probably are kind of, factoring into how Sam feels. And after telling the psychiatrist that, that it felt kind of right, the psychiatrist goes and calls Dermot Mulrooney, the Detective Bailey. Because by law, he has to call the police if one of his patients seems like they might be a serial killer, blah, blah, blah. So apparently no doctor-patient confidentiality clauses in New York. Or maybe that's an old thing. Maybe that's like an old 80s trope that I'm still kind of living on. I don't know. But yeah, so the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is one of 3 people to take a knife in the face in this movie. The last 2 movies have had a lot of facial stabs. Have you guys noticed that? Like this one had three people get stabbed in the face in this movie. That's something that they never really did with the early Scream movies, like be that brutal and that obvious about, you know, where a wound is and everything else. Like this was kind of crazy especially the first one, because it's a psychiatrist and he's actually killed through his storm door. He's got like a heavy iron storm door, but there's enough space in the storm door where if you break the glass, you know, you can get a hand through there, and that's pretty much what they do. They grab the psychiatrist, slam him into the metal storm door a few times, and then finally stab him right in the face. Basically, like just to the left of his nose, just bloop, right in there. Fucking awesome. And yeah, actually, two of our Ghostface get knives to the face, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. I don't know. What other important scenes should I talk about before the finale? Is there anything else that's vital?
I was just going to say about the setup room or the display room. When we first kind of got it unveiled, my immediate thought was like, oh my God, are they actually resurrecting the cult storyline? Like maybe not with Stu being alive, but maybe they transferred that idea to like somebody else, not even necessarily a legacy character, but you know, anyone could kind of like follow, you know, the way people are obsessive about true crime, like in the real world. I thought maybe they were just transferring what was supposed to be Stu to somebody else, because with all the you know, the costumes, and you would figure if a civilian has all those like props from the actual crime scenes, that's like a lot of effort to like go to get to obtain all that stuff and not be on anyone's radar.
Yeah, but then that also
you know?
Doesn't that also kind of highlight the police officer as being one of the main killers? Because
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
it kind of like almost boiled it down to like, okay, if they're not doing the cult thing, then it has to be law enforcement somehow. Now it was I think at that point it was a matter of like, it either has to be the cop is involved or somehow Kirby turned bad. Like it almost seemed like it had to be one of those two. And to me, it seemed too far-fetched to be Kirby, just because like there was absolutely zero she did suspicious in the movie to me, whereas the cop there was a couple things that already set off my alarms that like, that seems a little odd for the cop to be doing. So out of those two, I was like, I'm going with the cop. And if it is Kirby, there better be a damn good explanation for it, which it didn't end up being. So kudos for that.
Yeah, big time. I would have been upset if they would have tried to implicate Kirby in this, because it's too much. Just continue to bring back older characters from the franchise to be the new killer, you know? It's an old trope that we've seen before, and I don't really need to see again. So kudos there.
I really loved the whole shrine. I thought it was really honorable to the franchise as a whole. Like, you have Stu Macher's robe, to the TV that he was killed with, to all of the weapons that they used and all of the, you know, the killings and whatnot, and to have all of the Ghostface on display. I thought that was really cool. And I'm actually all on board for you know, Stu to still be alive. Like, I would love that. That would be like one of the coolest things for me to happen. I would love it.
I don't know about him being alive. Like, that would bother me. But if they did this, the Skeet Ulrich thing where he's, you know, a hallucination, I'd be okay with that. I mean, don't introduce like a daughter or a family member, because that's been done already. But I wouldn't mind seeing Stu in a hallucination the way we've seen Skeet. Because, I mean, how do you explain where he's been if he's been alive for what, 28 years since the first movie, 27 years? Like, how do you explain where he's been? That's a crazy.
The only explanation I could come up with, and this is just me like spitballing off the top of my head, is because I'm assuming, you know, they sure as hell didn't look like high schoolers in the first one, but let's give the charity that they were high school characters. So maybe.
Wait, Rose McGowan wasn't 18?
Yeah.
What?
Maybe there'd be some explanation where, okay, obviously Billy Loomis died, but if Stu survived as a 17-year-old, maybe they sent him to like a mental asylum because he was a minor, and after like so many years they released him and his juvenile records were sealed and he's laid low. Like, obviously it has to be something where it makes sense that he's just out of the picture. Because I don't think you could just say, oh, he's out there living and no one knew. Like, that wouldn't make sense. But
I mean, that seems like a reach only because wouldn't it be public knowledge that he survived and went to a mental institution? Like, it would have to be a coordinated effort if someone took his body knowing that he wasn't quite dead yet. And that's the thing, too. We've never heard any stories of Stu's body going missing or anything like that. Like, I feel like if they try to bring back Stu, they're going to give us such an over-the-top explanation that it's just going to suck. And
you would have to have you would have to have a major accomplice, like, somewhere in the system that, like, helped cover it up. It would definitely have to be so grand, and I think that's why it kind of sucks that they weren't able to go with that storyline, because I think that was supposed to be 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it would have made more sense if it was that early in the franchise, because now the problem is we're talking so many years later that it would have had to been hidden and covered up, where at least if it happened at 3, less time has gone by, so there's less time to cover it up, right?
Yeah.
And I think they changed it because, was it because of school? What was it? I know the show, you remember The Following on Fox? Like, they kind of, okay, well, it was kind of a cult. It was a cult murder mystery crime show on Fox. And from what I read, they kind of took what was supposed to be the Stu Scream 3 cult thing and made it the story for that, because the story of The Following starts out with the head bad guy already in prison, and he's kind of running things as a cult leader from prison, and then he manages to escape. So that's, from what I remember, that's originally what 3 was going to be. It was Stu in that situation, kind of running a cult from prison. And I can't remember if it was because of, like, school there was some reason they went away from it related to, like, events in the real world. I just can't remember exactly what it was.
That would have been right around Columbine, because Columbine was like 99, wasn't it?
Sometime around that, yeah.
It was right around the Dark Knight movie. Anyway.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Is Woodsboro a small town? I'm sorry.
I think it is. What state is Woodsboro in? Do we know?
It's been too long. It's been too long. I don't remember offhand. I think they mentioned it. It's like a Midwest thing, but
okay. That's why I have a little bit of a problem with the shrine. I love the shrine aesthetically, and the basic concept of the shrine I'm very okay with. But my question is, if Woodsboro is in the Midwest, how did they get all of that shit to New York? That means, again, it would have to be a coordinated effort. It couldn't just be one cop doing this. It's got to be multiple. It's got to be one guy in Woodsboro who's stealing this evidence and then giving it to someone in New York, or somebody from New York coming and picking it up. Whatever the case may be, one person couldn't have done this. This has to be a coordinated effort. Like I said, yeah, exactly. I'll suspend some disbelief because this guy is a police detective, so he's gonna have some pull. But I want to know who on the Woodsboro end was fucking people over, you know? Because this guy, they never say that this guy was in Woodsboro. They say that he transferred from another city, but not Woodsboro. So, you know, just me nitpicking again.
It would have to be that's on that side of the country, because they say Kirby's based out of Atlanta. So.
Oh, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, also if Woodsboro is a really small town, it would be harder to explain Stu still being alive.
Yep. That's what I was saying. That it seems like that information would have been public if he somehow survived and went to a mental hospital or whatever. Another question I have, too, is that if Woodsboro is a small town in the Midwest, how did that... I mean, I could see how all the crimes collectively, like Ghostface as a legend, can become a national thing. But specifically the events of Scream 5, to the point where random people in the street in New York know who Sam is. Because, you know, one guy calls her the psycho girl at the party right before she tases a guy in the balls. So I guess she is kind of a psycho. And then, of course, the girl who throws the soda on her. Now, I'm willing to accept that the girl who threw the soda on her was a friend of Quinn, and maybe Quinn had her do that, because just like Nikki said, they cut out the first part of the video, the part where she had the soda thrown on her. So it would make sense that that was a friend of Quinn doing a favor for Quinn, maybe not realizing that she was, becoming a hand at murder, aiding and abetting a murderer, but, whatever. I still question just overall how the Woodsboro murders are so popular in New York. There's a serial killer in New York every fucking week. So why would a Midwestern serial killer story, be that part of the vernacular in New York? Like, how did that many people in New York know about it? Like the Devil Made Me Do It murder was probably the biggest murder to ever happen in Connecticut. But when I moved to California, when people found out I lived in Connecticut, none of them were like, oh, Devil Made Me Do It, right? Blah, blah, blah. So it's like, where is this whole, community that is like sharing all this information, especially, like I said, New York, the biggest fucking city in the world. And somehow all these people have common knowledge of the Woodsboro murders. That just,
wouldn't it just been like the repetition of it all? Like, you've had 3 or 4 films now with these murders taking place, that it would probably be like a repeat occurrence.
Right, and the stab movies being popular, I'm sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's where I was going, was that you've got, there's 3 or 4 incidences in the city itself based on these events. Because I think 3 kind of takes place outside the city. That's in LA.
The California one? Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah. So 3 doesn't really count here. But you're saying you still got there's at least 3, maybe 4. I mean, I don't remember if the college they went to in 2 is the same thing. I mean, same state maybe. I mean, I don't know. But, I mean, you've got at least 2, 4, and 5 that all take place in Woodsboro. And then, you can maybe count 2 there as well. Plus, you've still got the stab movies, so that's at least, they say that there's at least 8 or 9 by that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a pretty big cultural thing there with everything happening in the same place.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think of as well, Quinn is the homicide detective's daughter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. At the end, when everything when is being revealed, she talks about how she started basically some gossip on the internet, and it spread, and you could see all of the online hate that Sam got when she was scrolling through it, and I could totally see it spreading to New York in that way, just through social media. That's the only thing I could think of.
I mean, I guess I can accept that. It's just that it's a big stretch, because we've never seen that in the real world. Like, people in LA aren't talking about a random guy from Michigan who killed his wife and daughter. You know what I mean? I understand multiple crimes, multiple movies, but I'm talking about Sam specifically. I'm not talking about anything that happened before Sam. Now, I'm willing to accept, as I've said earlier, I'm willing to accept the fact that maybe it's just Quinn making all these people do this shit. Quinn was the one who obviously started the rumor. She admitted it. But just, it just really irked me that you literally moved to the biggest city in the country and you still have people calling you a psycho. Like, I just don't really see that happening in reality. You know what I mean? Maybe like a BTK, like a serial killer that's nationally known. That's different. I'm talking about a local crime. Supposedly Sam doesn't have anything to do with the first 4 movies, so that's why I'm just, I don't know. It felt like her reputation preceded her, but in a very unrealistic way. That's all I'm trying to say.
There was also Gale Weathers' books, too. Sam was not particularly happy with Gale Weathers. She's like, you called me unstable. I don't know how in-depth she went into the books, but that could also been a contributing factor, perhaps.
Well, ultimately, Sam is unstable. I mean, she has every reason to be unstable. Don't get me wrong. She's got every valid reason to be, but, it's not really that far off the truth. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'll accept it. It's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that I think about. I'm an old man. I've lived a long time. And when I see shit in movies that has never happened in real life, it just kind of takes me out of it a little bit, but no big deal. Let's go ahead and get to our finale. Our finale, of course, is going to take place in the shrine. Basically, Kirby and our Detective Bailey, decide to use the shrine as a trap. They're going to try to lure all of the Ghostface killers to the shrine, lock them in there, and then execute them, as Tara says in the film. The plan has some hitches when they get there. Like, who's actually there? It's Sam, Tara, Kirby. They're the only. Oh, Chad is there too. Chad is also there. Millie, unfortunately, at this point, has already been attacked on the subway. I skipped that scene. It's just another, another kill scene that turns out not to be a kill, of course, because the Scream franchise has the strongest fucking teenagers on the planet. But whatever. So like I said, they lure the killers out into the shrine. Just before the killers show up, Detective Bailey calls Sam and tells him that it's Kirby. That Kirby is the killer because she was fired 2 months ago from the FBI. Obviously, that turned out to be a lie. But yeah, basically ingraining into Sam and Tara that it's actually Kirby. Kirby conveniently is missing at this point, which makes it a very believable story. I think anybody would have believed it because Kirby, as soon as they got there, she locked the elevator and then just disappeared. I think she probably locked the elevator because she knew that the real killers would have other ways to get into the shrine, which they did. And then we get our reveal, and we've got the most killers we've actually ever had in a Scream franchise. We have 3 of them here. The first one to reveal himself is Detective Bailey. He actually shows up at the shrine, points a gun at Kirby under the guise of, oh, you're the killer, blah, blah, blah. But then one of the Ghostface killers shows up behind the cop. Kirby tries to warn the cop that the killer is behind him. Detective Bailey takes a couple of shots, shoots Kirby. Kirby is now lying on the ground. And once the Ghostface killer kind of gets up beside the cop, basically puts his knife down, and they just kind of look at each other knowingly. And that's when we get the reveal that, yeah, this whole thing was Detective Bailey's doing. He is the mastermind of this entire thing. It explains a lot, how they got all this stuff, out of Woodsboro, blah, blah, blah. He's got police connections, so. And then we get the reveal of 2 more Ghostface killers, and these killers are actually in the Ghostface costume. I don't think we ever actually get to see Detective Bailey in a costume. Like I said, my theory is that was him in the bodega, especially because he had just called Sam to tell her to come down to the police station that they need to talk. He could have easily intercepted them while they were on the way to the police station. And like I said, the fact that he was just so proficient with that shotgun, hard to believe that these 2 silly white kids who, can barely kill someone successfully are that proficient with a 12 gauge. So, and then the first of the Ghostface killers takes their mask off, and it's Ethan. And I haven't even really talked about Ethan, namely because Ethan's barely in this movie. Ethan is Chad's roommate. And as it turns out, he basically doctored the roommate lottery so that he could specifically get Chad. Obviously, this plan has been in motion for like a year now, as we will soon come to find out. So, he obviously is trying to get close to them. He's able to get Chad as a roommate. They're now roommates. And then our second killer doesn't take the mask off right away, and you can almost see the look of disappointment on Sam's face when she goes, "Oh my God, is that Millie?" Because at this point, Millie is like the only one that's still alive, that's not part of the core. I mean, she is part of the core group, but she's not there. She's not there because they got separated in the subway scene where she ends up getting stabbed, blah, 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 blah. And but then the killer takes off her mask, and it's fucking Quinn. Quinn, the roommate, the slutty roommate who was one of the first people killed in the movie, quote unquote, killed in the movie. As it turns out, her death was faked. Detective Bailey explains that, when you're a homicide detective, you have a lot of power, especially being the father of the victim. So I would imagine he probably asked his fellow officers for time alone with his daughter's body. At that point, they switched out the bodies. He claims that they switched out the bodies anyway. It's not like we get a flashback scene or anything. Basically, they switched the bodies, and this is why I pointed to that scene earlier where when he comes out of the apartment that morning after the attack, he's fake crying. He is 100% fake crying. There's no tears. Even the emotion that he's showing on his face just looks fake. I obviously thought it was a red herring because Scream is filled with red herrings. You know, at this point in the movie, there's 7 or 8 potential people that could be Ghostface right now. So there you go, folks. We've got our reveal. It's a 3-man team: Detective Bailey, Quinn, and Ethan, played by Jack Champion, who to me looks like discount Evan Peters, but that's a story for another podcast. But then there's still something to reveal. Sam still doesn't understand, like, why are you doing this? What is the connection? And then that's when Quinn says, this is personal. You killed my brother. And she obviously is confused because earlier in the movie, Quinn says that her brother died in a car accident. No, my friends, as it turns out, Quinn and Ethan and Detective Bailey are all related to, drum roll please, fucking Richie from Scream 5. Kirsch, right? Was that his name?
Yep.
So yeah, there you go. They are basically, it is a revenge plot, which, like I said, that's kind of why I said earlier, it explains the brutality a little bit more. Because this is only a year removed. I forgot that it was Halloween in Scream 5, and now it's Halloween here. So, yeah, it's been a year. And so, like I said, the brutality does make a little bit of sense because every time one of these Ghostface killers kills someone, they're looking at them as someone who's responsible for their brother's death. So they go a little brutal with it. We get chase sequences throughout. Sam and Tara arm themselves with some loose bricks that are on the ground in the abandoned theater. Eventually, of course, there's a standoff. There's a fight. Eventually, Tara ends up hitting Quinn in the face with the brick, knocking out some of her teeth, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody noticed, but we clearly see teeth on the ground next to Quinn. But then later, up in the scaffold, when she smiles, she has all her fucking teeth. Yeah. Just a silly little goof that I'll point out that I saw. But yeah, because I would have loved to have seen Quinn with like a bunch of her teeth missing. That would have been fucking great. Just a satisfying image considering everything that we've seen in the film so far. So she's on the ground. Let's see. Ethan is chasing Sam. Ethan stabs Sam multiple times. Sam is eventually able to get a gun away from Quinn, or not Quinn, Kirby. Kirby, like I said, Kirby was shot by the detective. She dropped her gun. Sam at one point is able to pick up the gun and, give chase, or is being chased. They eventually end up climbing to a scaffold on the upper part of the theater where there's an exit sign. They think there might be an exit up there. But as they're climbing up, Tara loses her footing and she's basically hanging, holding on to Sam's arm. Sam's arm is covered in blood, so obviously she's slipping, losing her grip. And then, basically Tara asks Sam to let her go, which kind
we get our full circle metaphor of letting go.
Earlier in the film, Tara was upset with Sam because she couldn't, quote unquote, let her go, let her live her life and, be her own person. And then here we are, like Mike said, we're full circle back to it. And she's asking her sister again, let me go. You have to let me go. She motions towards the knife, actually Billy Loomis's knife that Sam took off the display, hands it to Tara, and then does exactly that, lets her go. Tara falls down onto Ethan. As she falls, Ethan's knife plunges into her midsection, so she is stabbed an additional time. But then she just goes ballistic on this kid, just starts stab over and over and over again. Eventually, she thinks that he's dead. And of course, apparently these people don't know they're in a horror movie because no one ever stays dead. Eventually, let's see, Quinn corners Sam up on the scaffolding, but Quinn doesn't realize that Sam has a gun. Sam pulls out the gun, points it right at her, gives off this great little sly smile that I fucking love, actually. It kind of alludes to the fact that maybe Sam is starting to get comfortable with killing, which, could set up a future film. I don't know, but she does the perfect thing and just lets out one shot right into the middle of Quinn's forehead. So she is definitely down and out. And as her body falls, we see the detective right behind her. And what I found really cool about this is that rather than Sam getting scared, because I forgot to mention that she tries to shoot the police detective and the gun is out of bullets, of course, convenient. But rather than dropping the gun and running away to try to get away from the cop, she drops the gun and fucking charges him yelling, which I fucking love. I absolutely love when, horror movie characters take their fucking shit into their own hands and stop being a whiny little bitch and actually do something. So yeah, she ends up attacking the detective. She's unarmed at this point, unfortunately. And they end up charging at each other. They hit each other. They both fall over the scaffolding. The detective lands on a display, a glass and wood display as part of the shrine. Sam lands just on the floor. She doesn't hit anything. So when the detective's out for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, I'm not sure. But when he comes to, Sam and Tara are both gone. He doesn't know where they are, but he knows that they're still there. And then eventually he gets a phone call on his cell phone. He looks at his cell phone, and of course it's Samantha Carpenter calling him. And when he answers the phone, of course, she's using the voice modulator, and she now sounds like Ghostface talking to him about, I forgot to tell you what the actual ploy was. The plan was to frame Sam for all of the murders, basically kill off both Sam and Tara, but having Sam wearing Billy Loomis's mask so that it would look like she just snapped and became the new Ghostface, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Sam refused to put the mask on, even though she was basically ordered to do it by the police officer, and which ensues this final chase where they're talking on the phone. He's walking around the theater with his gun out, pointed out. He ends up shooting some of the mannequins that are set up that have all the robes and had all the masks on them. They don't now, of course.
Which is kind of silly. I thought it was a silly action by him. I mean, I could see one of the other killers doing that because they're dumb teenagers, but the way he kind of acted, you still are a professional cop, and you're just randomly shooting mannequin heads. Come on now.
Exactly. And eventually, Sam does come out of the woodwork wearing the Ghostface costume, mask and all, and wielding Billy Loomis's knife. And then she goes fucking ballistic on the cop and stabs him. God, it felt like a couple of dozen times, just stabs and quick stabs. These are like prison stabs, like when people get shanked 10 times in 3 seconds. That's what this was, just stab, 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 stab. Finally, he's down for the count. The detective is down for the count. Sam pulls off her mask, her Ghostface mask, to reveal that it's her. Tara shows up at that exact moment, and Sam basically decides she's not going to kill the detective. She basically says, my father may have been a murderer, but I am not. And at that moment, though, Tara and Sam exchange a glance. You could see Tara kind of tilt her head really? You're going to let him live? And then Sam turns around to the detective and says, I'm not a murderer, but you did fuck with my family, which kind of alludes to a line from earlier in the film when Detective Bailey said the same thing. You fuck with my family, you die. So Sam, of course, has her awesome pre-kill line where she says, yeah, I wasn't going to kill you, but you did fuck with my family, and then stabs him right in the fucking eye. I also forgot to mention that during the struggle with Ethan, Tamara stabs him in the mouth, actually fucking jams one of the knives into his mouth and twists it, which, of course, again, would make you think that he's dead. But after the detective is dead and Sam and Tara think that everything is done, out pops Ethan, somehow still alive after being stabbed multiple times, taking a knife to the throat and having the knife get twisted while in his throat. Somehow he's still alive. He jumps out and, tries to attack Sam and Tara, but at that exact moment, the actual television that killed Stu Macher in Scream 1 comes flying from the distance, hits him on the head, and he is on the ground now, supposedly dead. And then we see Kirby still alive. She's the one who picked up the TV and said something about, I think her line was something along the lines of, I saw that done in a scary movie once. And that's pretty much your movie, folks. That is Scream 2023. I think there was a post-credit scene, wasn't there? But it was kind of meaningless, if I remember correctly.
There was, and I don't even remember. That's how insignificant
yeah,
it was.
It was a meaningless, like it didn't have any like story to it. It was just like a quick shot, maybe of Ghostface or something. I don't know. But yeah, a pretty uneventful post-credit scene apparently. But yeah, there you go, folks.
After the credits were done? Yeah, it was Mindy's character, and she just talked about how that not every movie needed a post-credit scene. That's what she said. Oh,
right. That's right. It was literally just that line. Not every movie needs a post-credit scene. Yep, I totally forgot about that. That actually made everybody in the theater laugh pretty hard. That was probably the biggest laugh we got in the theater, so... In a pretty packed theater, too. Like I said, both times I saw it this weekend, it was pretty packed. To be expected, obviously. But, yeah, there you go. 2.5 hours, and we're still talking about Scream 6.
Yeah. I think that is going to wrap up any walkthrough stuff for the most part. But do we have any closing thoughts of anything we didn't get to from anybody?
Honestly, I think I went over everything that I wanted to. The brutality of the film, the motivation of the killers. I'm still not happy with the killer reveals. I've never really, other than the first Scream, I've never been happy with a killer reveal. Yeah, they always seem like they're a little far-fetched or overreaching, but, for whatever it's worth, at least I could enjoy this one from a guilty pleasure standpoint. Getting to see these three get their comeuppance in the shrine that they built. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, overall, kudos, man. Bravo. Great job to the filmmakers. This is the surprise of 2023 for me. So
I will say with the post-credit little snippet that they did, a part of it didn't really sit well with me just because I feel that it was kind of a slap in the face to Scream fans who do sit through the credits for something in that way. So just on behalf of them, I want to say I feel that, but also at the same time, I do understand why it was done as well, so I can see both sides.
Yeah. I didn't get that, but I'm a credits watcher. I watch the credits regardless. I've all my life, I've been like that my whole life. I've always been interested in watching the credits. It's got nothing to do with post-credit scenes. So maybe that didn't hit, at least I didn't pick up on that as much as maybe, a bigger fan. I mean, you admit that Scream is not necessarily your franchise, but I would still say just by proximity and the DNA that you share, you're probably going to be more versed on the franchise than I am. So,
well, I actually saw like a post on social media, someone that said stick around for the credits, and I am typically not somebody who does stick around for the credits. So if I'm going to stick around, like I want to see something cool. So when I saw that, I was like, okay.
No, that's valid. 100% valid.
All right, then. Yeah, I guess that's going to wrap up our thoughts on Scream 6 and the episode. Yeah, it's one of our longest episodes in a while, but the bigger blockbusters, tend to be like that. So before we get out of here, though, let's go around and hear from everyone about where else they can be heard and what the newest is for them. So Venom, I'll start with you, which you usually cover everything on mine too. So go ahead.
All right, so the main show, No More Room in Hell, has just released its monumental 50th episode 50, where the three hosts basically look at one of their favorite horror movies ever. I know with me and Derek, we picked our actual favorite movies ever. Mike, unfortunately, his favorite movie we already covered on the show, so we picked another favorite. But if you want to find out what those three movies are, you'll have to check out the episode. That is episode 50, currently available. As Mike mentioned earlier, we're probably going to have 2 episodes of Fresh Cuts out this week. With last week's episode, A Spoonful of Sugar, probably dropping the same day as this one. So if you're listening to this one first, and you're a loyal listener, don't forget another episode probably dropped on the same day, so go check that out. No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 15 is currently available. That is our latest episode where Don, Derek, and myself looked at 1957's The Monster That Challenged the World. That episode dropped, I believe, last week sometime, so check that out. And I can actually announce that on the next episode, we're going to have both a guest and we're going to be looking at a legendary film. We are going to be talking with Brandon Young from the Anatomy of Fear podcast, and he picked his favorite creature feature for us to talk about, and that is Tremors. So, yeah, we got a big-name podcaster and a big-name creature feature on episode 16. That won't hit sometime until April, so look out for that. And Crystal Lake Gift Shop, episode 3 is still the latest episode. We're in the planning process right now for episode 4, so hopefully that'll be out sooner than later. And that's about it for me, folks.
All right, Don, what do you got?
Yeah, due to the proximity of recording dates, there's not much new for me. Horror Returns podcast, the latest roundtable March Madness episode I was on, looking at best elevated horror movie. Creature Comforts episode 16 should be recording soon. The only other new one that I have is the latest episode of the Horror Countdown, where I had a guest on to look at Asian horror films that had Western remakes. So it was a little different than most in that the eligible pool that we had to talk from was only films that had a Western remake. So we're basically talking about like the early 2000 J horror remake crave of Ring, Ju-on, Shudder, One Missed Call, Pulse, and stuff like that. So that was basically the eligibility pool that we had. So it was pretty fun, and we had some pretty interesting choices there. So it was a pretty fun time. But yeah, the only other thing for me is my weekly Women in Horror Month interviews and reviews on my page, which are published on my Facebook site. So other than that, that's pretty much it for me.
So for the Horror Countdown episode that you just released, is the top 10 based on the quality of the original, the remake, or both? Like
it was the eligibility pool was just the films that we had that had remakes. You can use any criteria you had. I had mine where I looked at how good the original was. So my list, cool. Yeah, my list was how good the remake, how good the original was. It was just I'm only picking from a pool that had remakes made in the West. Gotcha. The co-host, yeah, she picked how crappy the Western remake was.
So I was going to say, like, One Missed Call would probably be based on the original, not the awful remake. Right. As far as its position in the top 10, I mean.
Yeah, that was the way I did it. Mine was how good the film was. It was just we're picking from the pool of films that had a remake to it. And then we also discussed our thoughts on the remake. But yeah, the co-host, she picked how crappy the remake was.
That's funny.
All right, Nikki. Hopefully everyone knows the show you're on, but just let people know that don't.
Yeah, I am part of the Slumber Party Massacre podcast, and we will be recording an episode here in about 2 weeks where we're going to cover the Poison Ivy series. So that should be a good time.
Kind of sexy for you girls. Isn't that kind of a little above your wheelhouse?
Well, our last show was what we did sexiest horror films. We each picked what we thought was sexy in horror.
Nice. So lots of Serbian film.
I have actually never seen that.
Oh, good. Don't. I personally love. I'm unapologetically. I love a Serbian film, and it's not just because of its debauchery. It's actually a pretty well-made film that's got a lot of social commentary in it. I totally understand, though, that some people can't get through it because of some of the awful scenes. And I say the same thing to everyone who says they've never seen it. Don't. I don't think your life is going to be any more fulfilled having seen a Serbian film. Now, somebody like me, yes, that like somebody like me or Don, it probably speaks more to us. But yeah,
I'm just laughing at the fact of Nikki having to watch what goes on in there.
No, Nikki, never ever watch that movie, please.
No,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I do have boundaries, and I have watched reviews of a Serbian film, and there was one review in particular where somebody talked about how artistic it was, and with some of the trailers I've seen, I can totally see that. I'm just wondering if it would be something that I would never be able to get out of my mind if I watched it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are two scenes specifically that will haunt you for weeks. So
yeah,
don't.
It depends. How do you feel about necrophilia? Like legitimate necrophilia.
I have not seen a lot of films that portray that. I know there was a little bit of that in the movie Neon Demon, but it was very minimal.
Yeah, this is like legitimate full-on necrophilia.
Oh goodness.
And that's one of the nicer things.
Yeah, that's one of the nicest things. That's why I went there.
Well, the other thing with a Serbian film is for American audiences, it's going to be really hard to pick up on any of the political subtext because it's very specific to the experience of like the director, writer in their home country. So if you were to watch it, I would immediately go start Googling reviews and analysts of the movie, because once you read all that or watch breakdowns, it makes sense. It's just hard to pick up on that as someone that's we're so divorced from the reality of people in other countries that it'd be very hard on a first watch to pick up on any of that.
Yeah.
I always tell people the same thing. Check out Mr. Watson's review of a Serbian film. I think it's one of the most thoughtful and provocative reviews of that film ever. I already loved the film before I heard Mr. Watson's review, but after it shot up into my top 50 favorites of all time. There's just so much subtext that if you can't get past the debauchery, you're going to miss it. And like I said, I would never give anyone any shit for not finishing it or for calling a Serbian film trash, because, to the uneducated eye, it kind of is trash. But, it still has a lot of artistic merit to it that I wish people would give it more of a chance. But like I said, I still don't recommend it to normal people. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then. Yeah. So Venom pretty much mentioned everything that I would fall under as far as new stuff out. The only other thing I have as far as shows go is it looks like as of now we are on schedule for episode 51. It sounds kind of weird because 50 just came out, and in the recent couple episodes there's been long gaps in between recording new episodes of the main show. But unless anything comes up in the next handful of days, we will be recording episode 51. And wouldn't you know it, our guest for that one happens to be our guest for this episode of Fresh Cuts. So, Nikki, we roped you into the double duty of our shows, and
we're sorry.
Yeah.
Well, don't be sorry yet. You still got Crystal Lake Gift Shop to be on.
Yeah. So looking forward to that recording in a handful of days. And then the next episode of Fresh Cuts, I don't know if there's a theatrical release this week or not.
I don't think so. I think next week we got one.
Yeah, I think this is the week. We said that there was a week off in March, and I think that's this week.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, that's not a bad thing then, because then, it'll make it easier to put more efforts into the main show for the week and then worry about something on VOD right after.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, we got a lot in April. Got Evil Dead Rise, Renfield. April's pretty packed. That's all theatrical, obviously.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, before we get out, final thing, Nikki, thanks a lot for joining the show. I'm glad you endured it, because 2.5 hours is way over what we usually do for Fresh Cuts, but a big release like this, there was a lot to talk about, so thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you all. This was so much fun.
Yeah, and you got kind of obviously because you ended up liking it, but the luck of the draw that there was actually a movie worth talking about, because some people aren't so lucky when they're a guest on here. In the movie they're on, it's just like, well, not only is it bad, but it's like, what are we even going to talk about for this one? But at least Scream, they tend to be, conversation worthy, even for people that don't like them. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. We'll be back in a week's time for our next one. We'll pick something of all our choices on VOD, which are very plentiful at the moment. So let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
Bye.
Adios. Stay out of the bodegas.
Peace.